So if you're doing a preacher curl or a preacher curl machine, in terms of the setup, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you position yourself so your seat height and your body position gets this nice and snug. It's not necessarily so important that your armpit is touching this as much as it is that your arm is actually flush, so we have a nice solid piece here. You don't want there to be any way that your arm is going to rock up on here. So a lot of times people will be up with the elbow dug down so that they can launch this way, or they'll be rocked back here and then the arm can do this, so the weight's going to pull that shoulder out. You want it to be nice and flush, so now if I pull on here, Austin's shoulder isn't really going to pop up and down. Next thing you're going to do is make sure that your elbow point is lined up with that position or the pivot point of the machine. So let's go ahead and set up. And now to initiate the movement, the first thing he wants to do to make sure none of this moves is he's actually going to think about, like, this couldn't move. Like he was using this to push his arm down. So if I were like to give him a brace here and he pushed just a little bit, he's pushing into the pad more than he is pulling up. Once he has that little bit of tension and he's created that stability, tightened his upper back, not retracted it, but just tightened those lower traps and those rhomboids, now he can actually go through that movement. It doesn't need to be overly slow. It just needs to be a flash of tension, and then you can pull into the movement. As you're getting towards the top, Austin's thinking about not the handles being pulled in, but he's thinking about pulling his forearm towards his bicep, right? Or actually, if you want to think about hands, it's not pulling them towards your head. It would actually be like folding them down, pulling them into the shoulder. But we shouldn't see a lot of flexing at the wrist here. If anything, having these handles that can't move, the best thing is that you can like kind of relax that grip and focus on squeezing with the bicep and not wrist curling the machine. For the biceps, in terms of loading, in this position, the bicep does not have a very good pull on the arm. So in the first few degrees here, it's very weak. But once it gets a little bit of range, now it actually has some leverage to pull the arm up and in. But down here, it has very little leverage. It's like pulling the forearm into the upper arm rather than actually pulling the arm up. So if we could load this ideally, but we wanted to focus on the lengthened position, instead of loading it in this, you'd actually want to load it here. So we would set it one position off of the fully lengthened if we wanted to load the bicep completely. So in that case, instead of having it on the 3, I would set it on the 5. So one away from fully lengthened. And now if Austin goes through here and does this, it's going to be a strength profile that really matches what his bicep can do throughout the entire range. While a preacher machine is extremely valuable, unfortunately sometimes the fixed handles aren't going to fit everybody. So if you get in here and you don't have the ability to maintain external rotation at the humerus and be able to move in this plane fully with this handle. So if I were to come in here, because I'm a little bit wider and I don't quite have that shoulder mobility, I get to a point where it's like, all right, that's sticking, and now stuff has to, like my shoulders have to start making up for some of my limited movement. So a better solution may be to do it single arm, because then I can get my body positioned so I can move in that hinge position with no shoulder movement. I can maintain the stability. If I'm here and this happens, my scapula is coming up. That means the stabilizers for the biceps are letting go. I'm not going to get as good a contraction. I'm not going to be able to work the bicep, and I'm going to open myself up to getting shoulder injuries. So a better option would be, if this is a little tight for you, you feel your shoulders rotating, you can't keep that elbow pit up, is to actually rotate your body to the point that you need to be able to work in a perfect 90-degree hinge. And then the same thing. I want this flush. I want my elbow pit to be matching the machine. And now as I curl through this, there's absolutely no need for me to rotate, so I can do this nice and efficiently and only focus on the bicep tension.